It's been so bizarre the way that the media has literally continued to circle their wagons because they have a problem with a film that is about protecting kids. And it's just so weird to me. And the hypocrisy of leftist media is on full display with outlets that had willingly supported that Netflix movie, you know, the one I'm talking about, now saying that this movie is super evil. It's really, really, really bizarre to me. This whole, the weekend, and by the way, it's a smashing success considering its budget. $15 million budget for The Sound of Freedom. I think it did $45 million in its first week. So what that essentially means is it's made its money back at minimum. And it's probably made a few $1,000,000, which means more people will be likely to invest in indie films. And that's a great thing. Now, you see this article in Variety, how Jim Caviezel's faith-based Sound of Freedom became the summer's unlikely box office hit. Now, I don't know if I would call it a box office hit, but at 3-1 already in its first week. That'd be like if a Marvel movie made $600 million in its first week. If a Marvel movie made $600 million in its first week, it would be $1 billion movie. It would be a smashing success. So given that, I mean, if you look at a movie like The Joker, which had like a $50 million budget and did $1 billion at the box office, I mean, there's that kind of wildness. But this thing is pretty nuts. Sound of Freedom opened last Tuesday, generating a mighty $14.2 million on the Independence Day holiday, beating Indiana Jones, by the way. The film picked up another $18.2 million between Friday and Sunday, enough to place third in the domestic box office charts behind Insidious, Red Door, and Indiana Jones. That's the crazy part about it. These are like big budget Hollywood blockbuster movies, although Insidious isn't. It's smaller budget. But then right there is Sound of Freedom below it. And it's only playing in 2,800 North American theaters, a smaller footprint than Insidious and Indiana Jones, which are in 3,100 and 4,600 respectively. So Indiana Jones has nearly double the theaters. Quote, as with our July 4th numbers, today's numbers exceed our expectations. We're going to continue this momentum, said Brandon Purdy, head of theatrical distribution at Angel Studios, the independent studio that's backing the film. In a statement, we're getting messages from all over the country telling us a packed theater, sold-out theater, spontaneous standing ovations for the film in numerous locations. Seeing this film has become a must thanks to the incredible word of mouth. Purdy also thanked AMC, Cinemark, Regal, and Regal, which are three of the biggest movie theater chains in the country, for having the courage to release Sound of Freedom during the biggest movie season of the year. Yeah, I mean, it does take, you have to give them some amount of credit there. It's one of the biggest openings in recent times for faith-based film, according to ComScore, which counts this spring's Kelsey Grammer-led Jesus Revolution, $15.8 million debut, 2019's Breakthrough with Chrissy Metz, $11.2, and 2018's Erwin Brothers musical drama I Can Only Imagine at $17.1 as other top turnouts for movies that cater to religious audiences. Now, this movie is an action film. I don't necessarily consider it a religious film. I don't consider it a film that targets religious audiences either. Now, that's just me. There are things that Jim Caviezel has said in the past that are a little questionable. But I think it's really bizarre that the mainstream media is working so hard, and we're going to get into that, so hard to essentially memory hold this movie. It's almost like they're upset that people are calling them out. It's almost like they're upset that people are, pointing out that this is going on. Religious and conservative media groups have rallied behind the film, which is partially crowdfunded. The Utah-based Angel Studios and other unconventional efforts, including an app that allowed people to buy and donate tickets to those who can't afford the price of admission. About 2.6 million opening day sales were earned through the Pay It Forward app. By the way, genius. Totally genius. Which the company framed as a way to raise awareness for child trafficking. Alejandro Monteverde wrote that and directed Sound of Freedom based on the true story of Tim Ballard, played by Caviezel, a former government agent who embarks on a mission to rescue kids. Now, It opened up to an A+ cinema score. Of course, some people have been critical of it, and we're going to get into that. The Guardian has a big problem with this movie. This is what The Guardian said about Cuties. Cuties review: Netflix's controversial child exploits film is bold, flawed, and misunderstood. What do they call this film? QAnon whatever. And then you have this coming from CNN.
And you seem pretty familiar with him because he doesn't really hide his association with this real wild plot that involves, drinking the blood of children and things like that.
No, he doesn't hide it at all. And you have a lot of people who are in this world of QAnon who say, oh, they don't know what that is. They've never heard of it. They're just asking questions. With somebody like Jim Caviezel, he is openly embracing it. He's openly using its catchphrases and its concepts. He's speaking at QAnon conventions. And this film is being marketed to either specific QAnon believers or to people who believe all of the same tenets as QAnon, but claim they don't know what it is.
And The Sound of Freedom does focus on a real issue of sex trafficking. But that theme, it's sort of like that kernel of truth that feeds the QAnon conspiracy theory. Tell us how those two things work together.
I mean, they're outright telling people,
They're created out of fear. And with something like Sound of Freedom, it specifically is looking at QAnon concepts of these child trafficking rings that are run by the high-level elites, and only people like Tim Ballard and only people like Jim Caviezel, and by extension, only people like the ticket buyer can help bring these trafficking rings down. So there's a very participatory element. You're not just going to see a movie, you're just killing 2 hours on a hot day. You are helping bring down these pedophile rings and save children. Now, it's not true, but it's a very
Boy, you know what's interesting? I think it's pretty funny how all these people are saying, oh, how could this possibly, come on, rich and powerful people buying kids? That couldn't possibly happen. I'm sorry. Where exactly did Mr. Jeffrey get all his kids? It couldn't possibly happen in Wall Street and Hollywood, except I'm sorry, how come there are dozens of stories? Where are people like Roman Polanski at right now? All these stories you hear about child actors. Is that all conspiracy theories too? And you see Jack Posobiec writing, Redditors trash Sound of Freedom as Q film, mods forced to lock comments. AMA, I saw the propaganda film Sound of Freedom in a theater today, so you don't have to. I mean, you can see, all right, locking this thread definitely had enough users being accused of being P-words or predators because they don't like some dumb Jim Caviezel movie. Going through to clean up brigading now. Well, I mean, maybe you shouldn't so desperately be pushing against it. You know the old saying, thou dost protest too much? That's what it feels like. Sound of Freedom is a smashing success, projected to earn over 40 million in the opening week. It might actually get to 50 or 60 million. When you got guys like Patrick Bet-David putting out videos like this.
Look, whether you're a parent or you're somebody that has younger siblings or you got nephews, nieces, or you're just concerned about the direction America's going to, you have to go watch the movie Sound of Freedom. We were in Bahamas and we couldn't find a movie in any theater. And then finally we found a spot. We put the kids in the other room to watch Indiana Jones, and then we sat there ourselves and a few others. And from the beginning of the movie, you're going to feel the pain, the rage. There's going to be so many unique emotions you're going to have with the opening scene on what happens to the brother and sister and the father. And you're going to say, that's real. Then when you see the statistics, 22 million new child pornography pictures uploaded on the internet just in the last year, a 5,000% increase in the last 5 years. And the whole concept about the fact that this is a $150 billion a year industry, like $150 billion a year industry, it says you sell cocaine one time, but you can sell a child 5 to 10 times a day for 10 years. Look how profitable that is. And just last year, 2 million kids were taken for human trafficking. Just this year, in the last 12 months. I applaud the guys who funded the movie. I know there was a crowdsourcing way of getting the money. Obviously, Jim Caviezel was the right guy for this. Tim Ballard being the story of it, behind it. Everybody has to go watch it. And the most interesting thing about it was who bashed the movie. Just watch the critics on how they're bashing the movie. Oh, this was just a cue, right? Like, what? What? What part of the message has to do with that? The stats are being given.
That's exactly it. It's like, imagine being like pro grooming. In 2014, CBS did a segment applauding Sound of Freedom's Tim Ballard's work against trafficking. Almost 10 years later, the same media is now calling it that inspired his work is now calling it a Q conspiracy. I wonder why. You see Ali London, right? The mainstream media are coordinating with each other to attempt to discredit the Sound of Freedom because it exposes real life trafficking. These outlets want to hide the truth. The Washington Post, Rolling Stone, Media Matters, Jezebel, and The Guardian. Again, The Guardian called The Sound of Freedom a Q-adjacent thriller seducing America. They called Cuties misunderstood. I mean, is there anything else that needs to be said about it? Tim Young, Netflix paid for Cuties, and they turned down Sound of Freedom. 5 Times August points out, starting to notice a pattern with the type of people defending this stuff. They all look like they might partake in it. Now, obviously, I don't know what that type of person would look like, but it seems like, at some point, and by the way, the outlets, the mainstream media that is like, you could see Raheem posting, the only logical conclusion to reading this review is that the author is in fact a P-word or an apologist for it. Which is it? I mean, what is political, by the way, about this movie? Here you have Dana White. How are they getting all these super powerful people to just give them I don't know if they're paying for it or what, but here's Dana White.
Hey everybody, I'm Dana White. There's a new movie out called The Sound of Freedom, and it's about human trafficking. More importantly, the trafficking of children. This is a disgusting, horrific issue that's happening all around the world, and it's not getting better, it's getting worse. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna give any of my UFC employees that wanna see this movie free tickets to go see, and I would like to encourage other executives to do the same at their company. Here's Mel Gibson with some more information on The Sound of Freedom.
One of the most disturbing problems in our world today is human trafficking, and particularly the trafficking of children. Now, the first step in eradicating this crime is awareness. Go see Sound of Freedom.
I have not seen this film yet, but I definitely want to see it because it's awfully suspicious how hard the mainstream media machine is fighting to tell us that it's all just a conspiracy, isn't it?